Hey everybody, it's Gundersen. I am here in West Houston and wanted to give you guys an update, both for my BridgePoint family members and also for friends from all around who I know are very concerned about us and the other friends that you may have here in the city. I do have 4 kids who are in the house, and also some folks are coming over from church in just a little bit, so I've turned on a fan here for some white noise. If it's too loud, just let me know in the comments, and I'll try to adjust that. Just a few things. First of all, I just want to say again, thank you so much for your concern and for your prayers. It does not go unnoticed, and it's definitely encouraging, and really appreciate everything that you guys are communicating, the prayers, the offers to help. And again, as I said in my last update, those things don't go unnoticed, and they're not distractions. They're really welcome encouragements. So thank you. Second thing is an update on our building. Our building is not the most important thing by any means in the life of our church, but it is something that our church members are interested in, concerned about, as well as those of you who are not here in Houston. Our church building has taken on some water. As of this morning, there was about 4 to 5 inches on the bottom floor. There are 2 stories there, so throughout the entire bottom floor there is some water, so that is going to mean that we have a number of things to work on once this subsides. And not sure all of what that's going to mean, but we do have a building committee that I know is going to be invested in that process, as well as a bunch of capable and diligent folks who are going to want to help out with that. I'll post a video, Lord willing, shortly that is a shot from I-10, which runs right past our building and the flooding that's taking place right there below I-10 at our property. And so we'll let you know a little bit more about that. Just a few things about that. If you're a BridgePointer or one of our friends, it's good to mourn. It's good and right to feel badly and to be concerned about the building, even though it's not a person. And so that is a good and fine emotion. It's not cheap. It's not just sentimentality. It is sad to see some place that so many people have worshiped in so many times, and folks who really see this as a home base for what happens in their lives spiritually, to see that be under some water and to be damaged. At the same time, we know that the church is people, that Christ promised he would build his church, and he wasn't talking about a building, he was talking about his people. And so our main concern is that our people are safe, and then that as we find out that our people are safe, that we can mobilize all of us together. The building is a tool, and right now parts of the tool of our building are broken. The goal is to get the tool fixed as quickly as possible so that we can use the tool, not just so that we have a tool to hang out in, but a tool to use. And that's the goal, is to get that up and running again as soon as we can, so that we can use that with whatever opportunities come our way in the near future. Just a few things about some experiences today. I really had wanted to be able to get out and to try to help more tangibly, however was possible. I ended up driving a little bit north of I-10 and finding a boat launch area. The Coast Guard was there, and they were launching inflatables into that area. There were a lot of different boats that were coming in and were being sent out. And but really there wasn't a lot that someone like me could do. And what I mean someone like me, by that I mean someone that doesn't have a boat. And so what I found is that everybody who has a boat also has a buddy. And so people were bringing their friends out, and they were already set. And if you add someone to a boat who really doesn't need to be there, that's one less person that you can bring back. It was interesting though, because as I waited there and tried to help in whatever ways I could, what I found was that those boats that were coming back sometimes didn't have anybody in them, and they were struggling to find out where the evacuees were. There were plenty of other places where boats are hauling people out constantly and going back and forth, but there's such a need for accurate communication and for the resources to be connected to the needs. And so to me, that site was a really good illustration of how even when there are needs and you are near the needs, you need to have a sense of communication, and you've got to have some sense of strategy in order to be able to bring that together. And so really encouraged by the amount of boats that were flooding in, the amount of people that were just coming out to help, really from all over the place, as I talked with a couple different folks. And so that was just encouraging to see, but also an illustration of how difficult it is to make this stuff happen, and how one thing that's really helpful is to provide a level of organization. And so I found that once I was driving back from being out there for a few hours, that my thought process went to the best way that I can try to help is to provide some sort of organization and communication to the efforts that we want to provide as a BridgePoint family, because without that we can meet a ton of spontaneous needs in our own ways, but we're also going to be fairly limited in terms of maybe the scale of help that we might be able to provide if we, at least some of us, work towards getting things a little bit organized. To that end, we are, as I mentioned in the last video, trying to put together a response team from BridgePoint that can help provide some relief to people, and that can especially provide some organization. I know everybody is trying to see what they can do for just the needs they become aware of, but we also want to be strategic with a small group of folks that can help organize and mobilize. There are three main components to the strategy that we want to try to follow. The first is relief. The second is rebuilding, and the third will be relationships. And all those to some degree happen at the same time, but obviously it's kind of chronological as well. It is a process. So we want to start with relief and providing whatever relief that we can to the people that we know about. Second, there is going to be a rebuilding phase, and that's going to involve people's lives. It's also going to involve different structures that people live in and use, and businesses and churches and everything else. So rebuilding is a second. But a third thing along the way is we also want to prioritize relationships. And as you watch this unfold, you see a lot of people that you don't know. You see a lot of people whose stories and names you're not aware of. And it is easy to cross paths with people, whether that be on social media, someone posting something, whether it be watching the news, kind of crossing their path digitally or visually for a moment, or even when you're out in the street and trying to do something to help. It's easy to just pass by people as kind of a blinking need. But that blinking is going to disappear and they're going to be gone and you're not going to know who they are. So one thing we want to do is also prioritize relationships in the midst of this. So if there are ways we can provide relief or help with some rebuilding, and in that context also build relationships that can be sustained in some way so that we can have an ongoing ministry with people, that would be, I think, the best way for us to try to move forward. More information on that team and how we get organized in the days to come. Just a quick BridgePoint update for those of you who are at BridgePoint as members or regular attenders. This is how we're trying to provide some relief right now. Our elders and our staff are inputting status updates of our members and regular attenders into a shared spreadsheet. And once we have information about all the people that we know about, then we will be able to compare that with our system and all the people in our system and can begin reaching out to people that we don't know about in terms of their status. So that's what we're doing now, just so we can gather information and know where our people are and what's going on with them. Then we can go through and, again, identify people that aren't on the list and also begin to identify the needs that the people on the list currently have. And then once we have the needs there, we can then be able to mobilize resources to help our particular church family. And while we do that, we certainly want to be looking outward and helping others too, but we do have a specific obligation as church leaders to look out for those who are really going to be in need within our congregation as the floodwaters begin to subside. Another note here, this is more to Christian leaders or to just other Christians outside of Houston. I just want to say a few things to you. First of all, thank you for your concern and for your prayers. It goes a really long way towards providing some encouragement, simply knowing that people outside the city are thinking of those of us inside the city and in South Texas in general. There are plenty of areas outside of Houston that have been hit harder by the hurricane than Houston was hit by the tropical storm as it was downgraded at a certain point. There's a few things I think you can do, though, Christian leaders and other Christians from outside of here. I think that you can show your people how to respond. I think the way that you respond to these kinds of things certainly has a significant impact on how seriously the people that you're leading or the people that you're around actually take these things. How can you do that? Well, one is by just providing information. I think two things you end up providing that can be really helpful is stats and stories. Even before you get into practical ways to meet needs, when you share some statistics and some information, but also some stories of people that you know who are here, that really helps people put some flesh and bone on the large-scale news headlines that they're seeing run across their TV screens or across their social media feeds. Another way you can think about this, if you're a Christian leader who's interested in helping, I would encourage you to try to be practical, even if it's just one thing. In this situation, from afar, sometimes less is better. So you don't have to have 8 huge things your church is going to try to do from the far northeast or from the far southwest or something. You may just pick 1 or 2 things, do those things really well, connect with one church, one organization, and funnel everything you're going to do that way. That makes it more tangible for your people. It makes it more doable for you, and it also helps the help that you provide go deeper in many ways into the places that you're trying to reach. If you and your church want to give, a number of people have reached out to me and said, for example, one of my friends in Tennessee said, I want to mobilize my youth group to give this coming Wednesday night, and we're going to talk about your church. Others have talked about that in terms of this coming Sunday and providing some information to their churches to give. If you want to do that, I'm happy to send you a short video that enables people to see a face on the other end of this and to maybe see photos of a church on the other end of this, just so they can have a sense of humanity to it, because I know that really, really helps people. I would encourage you, though, if you're going to give financially, to do it quickly, because the news cycle turns over really fast, and it won't be long before some other issue is the burning issue. One of my good friends from Louisville said that today. It's striking how quickly the news in many ways has moved on, and I understand that because there's a lot of things going on in our world, and this is not the only thing. But at the same time, if you're interested in helping and moving your people to help, it is important to move quickly in this kind of situations because the needs are immediate. Also, if you want to help your people give in some way, prep them now for Sunday, for example. It's really helpful for people to know that that's coming because it enables them to think through what they want to do instead of waiting until they hear it announced and they're sitting in the pew or the chair on Sunday morning and that's the first time they hear of it and are not maybe really ready to respond. Also, for church leaders or other Christians, and specifically this is to leaders, if you're overwhelmed and you're like, there's so much going on in my church already or my organization already, and I am already to capacity myself in terms of my own life and priorities, hand this off to somebody else with a few clear directives. Find a real go-getter in your church. Find a mom who's super passionate about helping. Find a deacon who just gets stuff done and loves to do this. Find a super organized person in your church, whatever it might be. Find a person you know can help, and consider passing this along to someone and allow them to run with it and keep you informed and delegate that if that would help. Right now, I think some of the major needs here are providing supplies for these shelters, and you can simply go to your major relief organizations like Red Cross or to large trustworthy parachurch organizations that are going to be and already are providing those supplies lists, as well as places where you can send them to make sure that those are distributed in the best way. And so if you want to provide that kind of relief, that's one major need. And obviously, providing funds for many of the efforts to come is really going to help churches like ours help our church members. And once we've moved through and helped our church members to also try to help the surrounding community as we go along, we're going to try to provide, as BridgePoint, our church, we're going to try to provide specific information about our priorities in dispersing those funds so that those of you who might want to give can have a level of confidence and tangibility about where those funds would go. Because I know there can be a hesitation when you don't know what the organization does, you don't know where the money's going to go, and rightfully so. You should be a good steward of the lot or the little that you want to try to give here. Also, if you want to send a team here, just stay in touch with the people that you know down here, the churches or the organizations, and then come when there's a clear purpose and a clear job that you can do. There will be a need, I guarantee that, and it just may take a little bit of time to get those things organized, unless, of course, you're volunteering with a large organization where you can just hook up with them and come kind of on your own. In terms of teams, though, to come down and help a specific church or ministry, that'll be something that you'll need to maybe take just a little bit of time until there's some organization on our end. And as I mentioned in the last video, we just encourage you to remember this even when the news cycle has passed by putting, for example, a weekly reminder on your calendar that repeats and simply prompts you to reach out to those friends that you have to find out if there are any particular needs now that the waters have subsided and the news organizations have moved on to the next thing. Final two things. I just want to say this to my BridgePoint family. This disaster is a stewardship. This is something that God is going to teach us through. This is something God is going to unify us through. This is an experience that we're not going to forget having gone through together. And I am so honored and privileged to be able to go through it with you and to learn what God has for us. It's also a stewardship in terms of our vision as a church and where we want to go. I was about to start a vision series in the next 2 weeks, working through 8 to 10 different topics in the fall. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like at this point, but I will tell you this. This disaster and the stewardship it provides us in terms of an opportunity to serve one another and to serve our surrounding community is now a God-sent vision that is a major part of what our church is going to be about in the days moving forward. I can't tell you all the ways that's going to look, and in some ways that's a good thing because it's yet another reminder that God is ultimately in charge of his church. Christ is ultimately the head of the church, and we look to him for what our ultimate vision is. And so I'm looking forward to working with you to, as I mentioned last time, be zealous for good works, Titus 2:14, which is the tail end of the benediction that we have been publicly reciting together as a church for the past 4 to 5 weeks. And so just be preparing your heart, preparing your resources to be able to help. If you're hurting yourself, know that we want to come around you and to help you in order that as we move forward healthy together, we can be serving everybody that crosses our paths to help. One final thing that I want to share. I don't know that I've shared this publicly, but I had a very powerful lesson just a couple weeks into my time here. As you know, our lives in Louisville were very disrupted in an unplanned way when God called us to Houston. And one of the things I hesitated about during the process was knowing the hot weather and the flatness of this city. Just being honest with you about that. And the Lord got me over that, but at times that came back. And it was hard for me to be in a place that wasn't similar to other places I'd grown up and where the weather wasn't conducive to the kind of outdoor things I love to do regularly. And I had this moment a couple weeks into being here where I was just in the hot weather and I was in my heart just kind of complaining about it. Like, Lord, I'm living in this really hot place now. I can't do all the things I wanted to do before. It's not nearly as comfortable. I don't see my kids playing outside as much. And the passage that the Lord rushed into my mind was the story of Jonah, and specifically Jonah chapter 4. And it hit me. It hit me really hard. I'll never forget it. That here I was, just like Jonah, complaining about the heat when there was an entire city full of lost people right in front of me. And just like Jonah, sitting under that wilted shade tree, and complaining about how hot it was and how he wanted to die when there was a city of lost people in front of him. Here I was, not actively, proactively, strenuously thinking about our city and how to reach these lost people with the gospel, but I was thinking of myself, and I was thinking about heat and humidity instead of about mission and instead of about compassion. And as these floodwaters begin to subside, that is by no means meant to be a guilt trip on anybody to say, don't worry about your own stuff, don't worry about your house, don't worry about your belongings. We should mourn our losses, and there's going to take time to heal and to clean up and to rebuild. But I also want to say, I know this church well enough after only a few months to know this. This church is a church that's zealous for good works. You all have the Holy Spirit of God within you. And even as we suffer, I know that you are excited to serve. And I'm excited to serve with you. So thank you again for the time. I'll continue to try to provide updates. And soon we want to provide a more detailed outline of how we want to strategically mobilize together. And I'll try to keep you updated. Thanks, everybody.